A life cut short. The body of 17-year-old Mohammed Abu Saleh is taken to be buried. He was killed by Israeli forces during confrontations near Jenin in the occupied West Bank. The standoff started when the Israeli army arrived to demolish the home of Palestinian prisoner Mohammed Jarrah, who was accused of fatally shooting an Israeli settler in December. That also led to an armed standoff between Palestinian gunmen and the Israeli army. The army said, quote, it identified what it called a number of armed rioters and fired toward them to neutralize the threat. Hundreds of Palestinians had turned out to protest against the demolition.
There's a message here, and that's, zero tolerance. In other words, we, the Israelis, will not tolerate any kind of what you call resistance, what Israel calls, of course, terrorism. So what it's trying to do then is to say you're criminals, and any time you do a violent act, Israel will never consider it a resistance act, we are going to come after you. And the idea is to try to intimidate the Palestinians and try to give them the feeling that there's no space whatsoever for any kind of resistance to what Israel is doing.
Israel continues to apply its policy of home demolitions. The Palestinians and human rights groups say accounts to collective punishment against the Palestinian people. Stefanie, Dekker, Al Jazeera.
Meanwhile, tension remains high in the flashpoint suburb of Sheikh Jarrah in occupied East Jerusalem. Israeli police cleared protesters on Sunday, injuring dozens of people. Demonstrations broke out when a far-right Israeli MP tried to reopen a political office. Harry Fawcett in Sheikh Jarrah. What's happening now, Harry?
Well, just in the last few minutes, we've seen where there was a group of some Israeli Jews praying and some Palestinian Israelis and Palestinians sort of standing around them and filming. Police have just cleared that away, so the street is now largely empty of such groups, although one of the Palestinian families here over my right shoulder, the Salem family facing eviction potentially next month, are still gathered. What's been taking place has been this decision by this far-right member of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who, in response to an arson attack, the police say, on a local Jewish settler home in this area, he came to open a sort of a de facto open-air office, he said, to defend the rights of Jewish settlers in the area. There were pretty sizable confrontations and skirmishes, some violence overnight last night, during which he tried to get through a police barricade when they were trying to empty the area. He collapsed and fell, went to hospital, said he'd fainted and had a medical certificate to prove it. There was some ridicule of him on social media, sort of calling this whole thing very performative, but it is nonetheless extremely risky. He was back here again on Monday. He is a member of the Knesset, so he has parliamentary immunity. He has bad relations with the current Israeli Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, a right-winger that Ben-Gvir says has been a traitor to the right. So there is less leverage over him to get him out. And there are important confluence of dates coming up with the Jewish Passover and Ramadan taking place concurrently, or at the same time, rather, in April, the potential eviction of this family next month in March, and in the background, Hamas in Gaza threatening a severe response to Israeli actions in what you say rightly is a flashpoint area. So we're not quite a year since the last time that this really flared up and was a precursor for the Gaza war last May. It's not quite at that level yet, but certainly tensions are building again.
OK, Harry Fawcett, thank you for that update. He's in Sheikh Jarrah in occupied East Jerusalem.